talking about random things. Turn it down if it stings. It's the OZ Show. Let's go, let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the OZ Show. I am your host, Owen Zimmerman. Right off the bat, I do want to make it clear that that jingle that you just heard, as well as any other jingles that you may hear throughout the course of this podcast, was generated using artificial intelligence, AI, to the layperson. So if any of you guys have a problem with that, whether it be morally, legally, or anything of the like, feel free to send any complaints my way. I will ignore them, but I do take this stuff very seriously, and I don't want to alienate any of my listeners with something silly like that. So now that that's out of the way, I'd like to thank Sammy T, JMO, and the rest of the Windy City Wire crew. When I say the rest of the crew, I of course mean KO, for allowing me to do this on my own, a solo episode. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm so excited I actually ended up doing some prep, some homework for this. I mean, I've been out of school coming up on 4 years now, and that means I haven't done homework in close to 7 years. So it's certainly different, getting into that, grind of working outside of the regular 8-hour work schedule. So I've got a very, very nice outline for you guys for a great show. I've got 5 segments, and I think, ranging from obviously sports, which you probably came here for, to listener submissions, kind of grab bag, reptiles, everything, pop culture, everything. So I'm excited. I think that's enough of an intro. Let's get right into it with our first segment, Sports Corner. It is January, which means it is football playoff season, both college and professional. We will start with college. We have 2 semifinal games this weekend. As of today, as the day of recording, it is Wednesday, January 8th. By the time this is posted, it'll be January 9th, Thursday. That is when the first college football semifinal game will be played between Notre Dame and Penn State. And if there's anything I've learned about myself throughout the last couple months when it comes to gambling on college football, it's that I know very, very little about the sport. So anything I'm about to say should be taken with a couple of grains of salt, if not flat out ignored. But for the first game, Notre Dame, Penn State, Notre Dame is a team that beat my Indiana Hoosiers in the first round. Just to talk about that a little bit, I would be remiss if not to. Overall, I'm proud of what the Hoosiers did, even though they got absolutely outclassed in the game. The final score is probably not indicative of how badly they got beaten, but ultimately, when you look at it in hindsight, in the rearview mirror, their 10-point margin of defeat was the lowest of any team in the first round of the college football playoffs. So that's certainly something to hang your hat on, especially when you're an Indiana program. When you're an Indiana program who has the most losses of any team in the history of college football. Just to make it there, I think, is a huge testament to Coach Sig and everything he's doing. I'm excited about the future of this team and where they can lead us. Who knows, maybe a few years from now they might actually win a game in the college football playoff. Fingers crossed. But Notre Dame then followed it up with beating up on Georgia, SEC's Georgia. SEC alleged best conference in college football, or that's what people have been saying for the past several years. Probably has been true in the past. No longer the case, it seems. Georgia seemed to be outclassed by an independent Notre Dame team, which was fun to see, even though I do not care for Notre Dame. Penn State is their opponent in this game. Penn State has also won 2 playoff games up to this point. They've beaten SMU and Boise State. Now, I know what you're thinking. Penn State can't possibly win tomorrow night or tonight, January 9th. Given that their coach is big game James Franklin, notorious for shitting the bed in any game that would be considered big by any stretch. And you're probably wondering, well, if he can't win a big game, how has he won 2 playoff games to this point? And the answer is very simple. Neither of those games qualified as big games. I think anybody with a brain would agree with me. Their game against SMU was at home. It was a whiteout. Very low stakes, as easy of an atmosphere as you can ever experience in college football in a playoff game. Then their second game was against Boise State. Well, yes, Boise State was the higher seed. I think anybody would agree with me, again, if you know the sport of college football. And again, bears repeating that I don't know the sport of college football, but pretending that I do. Anybody who knows about the sport of college football would say that Boise State was not deserving of the automatic bye. It was pretty clear that Penn State not only was the favorite team, was just plainly the better team going into that game, and they won it easily, so obviously not a big game. The game against Notre Dame is a big game, but I do think that James Franklin breaks free of his own reputation and gets the W and moves on to the championship. Right now, Notre Dame is favored by 1.5, and the over-under is 44.5. I tend to lean Penn State straight up. Really don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't trust Riley Leonard, but at the same time, I don't trust Drew Aller. I don't know. Maybe I just like Tyler Warren, the tight end for Penn State. Maybe I like the Penn State running game. Maybe I'm just picking straws, grasping at straws, picking random numbers out of a hat. But I like Penn State to win that game. The other game on Friday is Ryan Day's Ohio State Buckeyes versus Coach Sark's Texas Longhorns. This one I think could be entertaining. The over-under is 53.5, predicted to be a relatively high-scoring game. Ohio State 5.5-point favorites. Ohio State's playing some great ball right now. I don't see how Texas, especially coming off of a very close game against Arizona State, and an inferior Arizona State team, at least on paper. I don't see how Texas can stay with the Buckeyes. Will Howard is absolutely special. He's been able to elevate his receiving core to a certain extent, to the point where they're actually producing at a respectable level. I think they'll be able to work their way by the Longhorns and take on the Nittany Lions in the championship game. Interesting, the championship obviously being a conference game, a Big Ten conference game, but a matchup between two teams with coaches that are kind of notorious. We already talked about James Franklin for losing big games, and Ryan Day, he's kind of got the reputation, at least in my eyes, of being a dog shit football coach. I'm assuming he's going to do something dumb in this game, clock management-wise or play calling-wise. But I think Ohio State, while not necessarily a tough team, may be tougher than Penn State, and I think they will end up being the college football playoff champions. And again, I'm just going to repeat this one more time. I do not know what I'm talking about, so everything I said is likely to prove to be false, but I still said it anyway, and you guys listen to it anyway. Moving on to the NFL. Week 18 was last week, and I think I have to mention my Green Bay Packers losing to the Chicago Bears in what was an embarrassment of a football game. Injuries notwithstanding, well, injuries should not have happened. You can look back and say, well, yeah, technically the Packers could have worked their way up to the 6th seed, but it was never likely that the Washington Commanders are going to lose to the Dallas Cowboys, quarterbacked by Trey Lance. Even though that game did end up coming to the wire, obviously the Commanders did win, as most everybody predicted. So the Packers game against the Bears ultimately did not matter from a seeding standpoint. Still disheartening to lose to a team that you've owned for the better part of the last 6 years. Jordan Love getting hurt, obviously not good. Christian Watson getting hurt, obviously terrible. Playing the Eagles in the playoffs on Sunday afternoon, I am not optimistic. Last year at this time, I was extremely optimistic because the Packers were playing great ball down the stretch. Jordan Love was on fire, and they were playing the obvious frauds that were the Dallas Cowboys. This year, I do not think that the Eagles are frauds. I think the Eagles are the favorite to come out of the NFC, or should be the favorite to come out of the NFC, or maybe rephrase, are my favorite to come out of the NFC, namely because they don't play in the NFC North. But I think the Eagles are a good team. They've got a great offensive line. They've got a great defense. It's going to be a tough battle. I do not see the Packers winning that game. I would say I would not predict them to win the game. I certainly think they can, but I do not think it's necessarily likely. So I guess we can just go through the bracket while I've got you here. In the AFC, the 1 seed is the Chiefs. They're on a bye. The first game of the postseason is the Texans and the Chargers. I do not believe in the Texans. The Texans are a team I did see play in Green Bay this year. I think C.J. Stroud is taking a step back. Obviously, he's got issues with the receivers being injured. I think his offensive line is just generally not very good. So I do like Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, and the Chargers in that one. The 3-6 in the AFC is the Ravens and the Steelers. The Ravens are big favorites. I do not see how the Steelers win that game. just given how poorly they've played down the stretch. And now I know, yes, that the Ravens have had issues in the playoffs in years past, but I do not think the Steelers are going to be that big of a challenge for them this year. And then the Bills and Broncos, I think the Bills are simply going to overwhelm the Broncos. In the divisional round, that would leave us with the Chiefs and the Chargers in Kansas City. I think the Chiefs win that one fairly easily. And then it also leaves us with a tremendous matchup in Buffalo with the Ravens and the Bills. I think this is the game that Lamar Jackson pisses all over himself, and the Bills win. I think every year we get fooled into thinking that Lamar Jackson's going to do something in the playoffs. I just don't. I need to see it before I can trust him. And obviously the Bills are an excellent team led by their quarterback, Josh Allen, leading us to a Bills-Chiefs conference championship in Kansas City, obviously. I'm going to go with the Bills just because I want to see something different. Now, you can say this is something that I want to see, not necessarily something that I think is going to happen, but I'm going to go with my heart here and take the Bills over the Chiefs. I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I think most people would agree with me. Over in the NFC, the Lions are the 1 seed. The 4-5 is the Rams and the Vikings. Give me the Rams, primarily because they are not the Vikings. Then the 3-6 is the Buccaneers Commanders. I think that's got a potential to be a really nice game. Two offenses that can really put up some points. If you asked me before last week or 2 weeks ago, I would say the Buccaneers were a real threat in the NFC just based on how well they had been playing. They didn't play well in Week 18, but I still do think that they can get it done this week on Sunday. I have them advancing, and then the aforementioned Eagles-Packers. As much as I'd like to pick the Packers, I think my brain is kind of it's saying that the Eagles are more than likely going to win this game. So just for the sake of argument, let's say the Eagles do win. That would set up a 2-3 with the Buccaneers in Philadelphia. I think the Eagles win that as well, moving on to the NFC Championship game. And then for the other divisional round, we have Rams, Lions. Matthew Stafford return to Detroit yet again, back-to-back years now this has happened. I love to see the Rams win that game, even though I don't like the Rams. But I will take the Lions. And then, again, thinking with what I want to happen, more so than what I think will happen, I will take the Eagles to win the NFC Championship to take on the Bills in the Super Bowl, and I will have the Bills win and become the Super Bowl champion. So that is my sports segment. We will now be moving on into segment number 2, which is listener submissions.
The time has come to read your thoughts aloud. From emails, DMs, and voicemails you've allowed. Listener submissions, stories big and small. You made the effort, so we'll share them all.
This is listener submissions. I asked my group chat to submit some topics they'd like me to discuss on this podcast. And I am open to all suggestions. Like a true podcaster, I am willing to speak on any topic, no matter how little I know about it. So the first submission I have here is to discuss Jera Jones is cameo on the TV show Landman. It's kind of a 3-parter here. It's Jerry Jones and Landman, Coach Tubby, and my viewpoint on the FS1 lawsuit. So the first part of that, Jerry Jones and Landman, I don't know if you guys have seen this. I don't even know if you guys know what Landman is. It's a show with John Hamm and the creepy guy. What's the creepy guy's name? This is going to bug me. He was Angelina Jolie's husband. If that helps you guys visualize who I'm talking about. It's a guy. It's a name I know. Billy Bob Thornton. John Hamm. It's a Taylor Sheridan Western. On Twitter, it was going around the other day. Jerry Jones made a brief pop-in appearance, and he was actually really good. He was like fighting back tears, really showing actual human emotion, which is not something I frankly thought he was capable of. So that was certainly a surprise from that standpoint. I have not been watching my show. My dad actually watches the show, and he's been asking me to do it. I've got other things on my docket, unfortunately, but I did see that, and I thought that was a really impressive performance from Jera. The next question is, it just says, this suggestion just says Coach Tubby. Obviously, that would be Mike McCarthy, for those of you who are not in the know. The Cowboys, and actually Jera Jones, interestingly enough, denied the Bears' request to interview him for their open coaching position. I personally would love to see Coach McFadass on the Chicago sidelines. obviously coming from Green Bay. Not a very ceremonious end to that tenure. I just think it would be exceptionally funny if Mike McCarthy was the Bears coach, because I think eventually things would go wrong, and it would be absolutely hilarious for me to just sit back and enjoy that from a third person's perspective. And then the last note here is about the FS1 suit, obviously centering on Emmanuel Acho. As a remote worker, I have not spent much of any time in an actual office, so I'm not too familiar with the politics of how things go on and the interpersonal relationships in an office setting. My understanding of this lawsuit is that people were getting promoted for the wrong reasons, perhaps, leading to a little bit of concern among other employees. It's sad to see that. Politics do not belong in an office. But they'll always be there, and it's a matter of office culture and all that mumbo jumbo nonsense that nobody really cares about. But it's unfortunate. What the most unfortunate thing to me is that people do watch Fox Sports 1. I've seen clips that come from those shows. It's amazing. It's like ESPN, but with even fewer talented people. It's amazing that's still actually still kicking around, but good for them, I suppose. Also, another listener submission, talk about defensive coordinator Tom Allen. Discussed that a little bit earlier with the Penn State. Tom Allen, of course, used to be head coach. Tom Allen of the Indiana Hoosiers was hired to lead the defense at Penn State for this season. I don't know how good their defense is. Again, I think I'm flogging a dead horse when I say I don't know a whole lot about college football. I'm assuming that Penn State's defense is pretty good, and I'm assuming that most of that success is purely a direct result of the defensive coordination of defensive coordinator Tom Allen. So congrats to him. Another one here, we have WWE Raw on Netflix. I don't know how many of you guys are wrestling fans. I mean, we get about 10 weekly listeners on the Windy City Wire. Of those, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 know anything about wrestling. But just for some background, WWE Raw was on the USA Network for 30-something odd years. As of this Monday, it is now being broadcast live on Netflix. Their first show was this Monday. It was a big one. All of the superstars were there. Triple H, The Rock, The Undertaker was there. All the modern stars, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes. It was a big show. I thought it was pretty good. As a seasoned watcher, though, I thought it was less than perfect, less than ideal, because it tended to pander a little bit towards the novice new viewers that were just watching because it happened to be on Netflix. And you'd understand if you're in the know, you'd understand what I'm talking about. All the baby faces won their matches. The Rock was a corporate stooge as opposed to his real character that he had kind of cultivated over the past year or so. So that was a little bit disappointing. But overall, I can't say that I didn't enjoy the show just because of the star power and the quality of matches that were broadcast on Monday. What else we have? We also have Jello Ball's song. I don't really have much to say on LiAngelo Ball's rap song other than take the time to listen to it and come up with your own opinion. I think it's pretty damn catchy, but music is pretty subjective. And then finally, California wildfires. So I don't have a lot to say about the California wildfires. I think it's kind of a nuanced issue. I will say this plainly, and it as directly as I can possibly say it, and unambiguously as I could possibly say it. I am 100% against the wildfires. I think they're bad. I wish they would go away. I'm not too educated on current events. At this point, you're probably wondering, oh, and what are you educated on? That's really none of your concern. But I think that obviously worried about all the people that live out there in California. I don't think you ever really want your house or the outskirts of your house or the foliage around your house to be on fire. That seems like a very negative situation to be in. Good luck to everybody then. I'd feel terrible for anybody who loses their home and whatnot, but I don't know if this is the correct place for a nuanced discussion about wildfires, their causes, and the responses there too. Okay, so that's it. I think I'm looking through. That should be all. So again, moving forward, if we do more of these shows, feel free to send me topics you'd like me to touch on. Like I said earlier, I'm willing to talk about anything, no matter how little I know about it. So that's the podcaster's way. I guess just arrogantly talking about something with confidence, and that's how I become a good podcaster. So I am willing to do that. So, again, if you want to say something or submit something for me moving forward, feel free to do so. But now we are moving on to our next topic, which is the Ask Google section.
Sometimes he has to ask for help. He likes to eat tortillas, but doesn't care for kelp. Let's see what Google has to say.
Okay, now for this segment, I Googled fun podcast topics and looked for one that I thought caught my eye, and one did. It was to create a top 5 or top 10 list, and that one struck me because I actually have a top 5 list that I put together previously of my favorite SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Now, I put this list together originally, I think, in my senior year of college, and I had a lot of free time in my senior year of college, because I thought I was going to do a long-form YouTube video about it. When I say long-form, I mean a 30-minute YouTube video discussing the nuances of these SpongeBob episodes. Ultimately scrapped the idea, but now I guess is a perfect time to bring it back. So my criteria when I made this list, and again, this list was made 4 years ago, obviously hasn't changed because all the new episodes stink. But my criteria were quotability / memorable lines, memeability / cultural impact, and finally character development / introduction of new characters. I do have a couple of episodes that I didn't include in my list for various reasons. Number one would be Frankendoodle. That's one of the most famous episodes, probably the most memeable of all the SpongeBob episodes. I think everybody knows that episode. I don't really have much I could add about it, so there's really no point of including it in my top 5. Same thing with Band Geeks. Band Geeks, I think, is almost unanimously thought of as the best episode, so including it in my top 5 wouldn't be adding much to you guys. It's just an awesome one. Many people would say, well, you could make a compelling argument that it actually should have been the series finale, but it was an absolutely outstanding episode that everybody knows, and it requires no additional discussion. The Christmas Who is the Christmas special from season 2, which is a great episode. It isn't a seasonal one, so really wouldn't feel great putting that one in the top 5. The Krusty Krab training video kind of seems like a standalone type thing, more so than a regular episode, but it is one of my favorites too. As Seen on TV is another good one that I'm not going to put in my list. I don't think I need to add any interest to that because at the time when I put this list together, there was a YouTube video of a guy reciting the episode As Seen on TV from memory on YouTube. I don't have his name or anything like that, but I didn't think I could add anything to it or do anything to top that performance. And then finally, Chocolate with Nuts is just another episode that's kind of in its own tier, own class, that really doesn't warrant any additional discussion. So, all right, starting with the actual list, number 5, I have the camping episode, which of course is famous for the sea bear and sea bear attacks and later sea rhinoceros. Just one of my favorite episodes, just because you get a good dose of, it's just Squidward, Patrick, and SpongeBob just shooting the breeze right in front of their house. I think it's very funny. It's very simple, very memorable, and just overall one of the better episodes of the series. Number 4 is I Had an Accident, which is the episode in which SpongeBob shatters his butt. Perhaps best known for the introduction of one-off characters, Chip, Penny, and used napkins. Obviously, there's the indoor song, and then finally at the end, one of the most confounding moments in the entire series would be the gorilla attack of Sandy and Patrick, which was never really explained, kind of came out of nowhere, and it's just really, really stupid in the funniest way, if you ask me. Number 3 is No Weenies Allowed. Just a great one with Reg, the Salty Spittoon, Weenie Hut Jr., Weenie Hut General, Super Weenie Hut Jr., one of my favorites always growing up. Number 2, SpongeBob Meets the Strangler. I am a huge fan of the Tattletale Strangler. Perhaps my favorite one-off character. A little background, a little story time. Freshman year of college in our dorm, right quadrangle at Indiana University Bloomington. The RAs, when we first got there, put up pictures of cartoon characters on the doors of all the dorms over the people's names who lived there. I don't remember who mine was. It might have been like Rick and Morty or something like that. But I took it down and put up the Telltale Strangler instead, just because I appreciate what he stands for. I think it's a great episode highlighting SpongeBob's stupidity. I think Patrick has some great moments despite not being in the episode very long. So overall, a great one. Before number one, I do want to touch on a couple of honorable mentions here. Nasty Patty. A big fan of the health inspector. The entire concept of that episode I always enjoyed. Survival of the Idiots I have as another honorable mention. That's the one where SpongeBob and Patrick are in the tree dome while Sandy is hibernating. Who you calling Pinhead? That's just a really good one. Number 6, and this one really making a compelling argument should be in the top 5. Could be in the top 5 is Squilliam Returns. One of the more memeable episodes, the appetizer, may take your hat, sir. Humana, no soup for your armpit. We threw out his name. Just a very, very, very memorable episode. I think it's one of the few Squilliam episodes. He's one of the better minor characters in the show, and it's actually an episode told from Squidward's point of view, which I always appreciate too. And speaking of point of view, that brings me to number 1, and that's the algae is always greener. And this is where Plankton and Mr. Krabs switch lives, so Plankton becomes the proprietor, of the Krusty Krab. I think it's the only episode that I can think of told from Plankton's point of view. I think it's incredibly memeable. A lot of funny moments. Soiled it. May I take your hat, sir? All of that stuff. The appetizer. No, excuse me. The appetizer is not from that episode. I already talked about the episode. The appetizer is from Squilliam Returns. So apologies for that. But the algae is always green. Excuse me. Oh no, he's naked. Good grief, he's naked. Just the entire concept of Plankton living in Mr. Krabs' world, being Pearl's father, running the Krusty Krab, all of that. I always really enjoyed it. I always found it a very funny episode, an episode I would always try to watch when I saw that it was on. So that is my top 5 list. Our next segment is the Owen Update, which is an update on my personal life. Owen's Update. The big thing here is I want to kind of share what's going on in my life from a media consumption standpoint, so we can start there. I have been, over the past year or so, now 2 years, I guess you could say, starting in the end of 22, I've been trying to read books. I kind of had a decade-long stretch where I didn't read a single book for pleasure, and I also didn't necessarily read, and there's quotation marks there, any books for school. I would say shame on Schmoop, and what's the other one called? Spark Notes. Shame on Schmoop and Spark Notes for making it so easy to not read books. I can only imagine what it's like now with Chat GPT. I wonder if kids actually do any work. I think in a couple of decades we'll find out that no one does anything, no one knows anything. But yeah, long story short, there was a long period of time where I did not do any reading. I've been trying to read a book every couple of months, every couple of months. Did so last year. So this year right now I'm working on, I'm reading Flash Boys by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis, of course, being the author of Moneyball and The Big Short. This book is about high-frequency stock traders and how they get in front of the market using technology, being able to see orders nanoseconds, milliseconds, microseconds before the rest of the market can, and scalp off of those prices. I'm about a quarter of the way through. I find it very engaging. I will be finishing it. So that is the book I am reading right now. I am also watching the TV show Lost. It is on Netflix. I remember when it first came out, and I think it was from 2004 to 2010 when it first aired. I remember that my mom specifically, I think both of my parents, but my mom specifically was watching it religiously, so I kind of remembered some of the characters going into it, or I kind of had an idea of, excuse me, who some of the characters were into it. Right now I'm in season 4 of 6. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of amazing. It's a little frustrating at times just because it seems like it's just mystery stacked on top of mystery stacked on top of mystery, and there are really never any answers. But I think obviously that does create natural cliffhangers and keep you coming back and back and back. I mean, every episode seems to end with a shocking revelation or a cliffhanger or a question that you didn't even consider up to that point. So it's an easy show to watch, several episodes in one foul swoop. I guess my one critique would be that I don't understand why any of the characters trust what any of the other characters say. I mean, everybody's always lying. There's one character in particular who literally has never told the truth to anyone ever, yet every time he says something or gives an order or makes a suggestion, somebody listens to it and falls into one of his traps. I mean, how many times can that possibly work before people start to catch on and just tune him out completely? I don't know. That might be a bit of a nitpick, but that would be one of the negatives I would have to say about the show. I also watched the Wallace and Gromit movie this past week, the new one, Vengeance Most Foul. I mean, I liked it. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. I didn't like it as much as The Curse of the Were-Rabbit or some of the other shorts, even like The Wrong Trousers with Feathers McGraw. I thought it was a little bit too self-aware. It had too many meta jokes. I mean, there weren't a lot of them. Obviously, this is another nitpick, but there weren't a lot of them. But there were a couple of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, remember this? Hey, we're aware of what we're doing here. This is supposed to be funny. I don't typically care for that. That's why I've kind of stayed away from the Marvel universe, just based on some of the the meta self-awareness things I've heard about that. Now, there are other reasons I've stayed away from the Marvel universe. It's just I don't really care to get involved in that, but that's a different story. I don't want to watch one movie and then get sucked into having to watch 20 more. That is a complete non sequitur. Anyway, I did like the movie, though. It had Feathers McGraw for Christmas' sake. I mean, that's perhaps the greatest villain in the history of cinema. I would put him up there with Heath Ledger's Joker for sure, Anton Chigurh, Hans Landa, and I think, then Feathers McGraw would probably be the fourth on that Mount Rushmore. Let me know if you disagree with that. And then I just recently today, Wednesday the 8th, finished a 3-day water fast where I did not eat any solid food for 3 days. I only drank water, electrolytes, and had a little bit of bone broth. Just because I think over the holiday season I was consuming quite a few calories and wasn't necessarily burning all of them, so I think a lot of them ended up getting stored in my body as gelatinous fat. So I kind of wanted to flush that out, get it kind of reset my system, get rid of some of that, burn some of that off. Burn some of that energy reserve off. So I feel great, actually. Honestly, I feel very energized. I was pretty hungry the last couple of days, but it wasn't like I wasn't starving. I didn't find it impossible. I thought, if I just thought about other things, it was pretty easy to forget the fact that I hadn't eaten in 72 hours come this afternoon. And trying to think, that's about it for me. My parents are going to Florida, but that's not really a concern of you. I'm going to be going to Arizona in a couple of months. That's not really a concern of yours either. So. All right, I think it's time for our last segment, which is the Reptile of the Day.
Reptile of the day, it's our highlight. Crawl in, it's time to explore today's cool creature you adore.
This is the Reptile of the Day. This is born out of the fact that when I was younger, I actually used to really be into reptiles, really into the Crocodile Hunter and National Geographic and the Discovery Channel, all that. I was big into animals, actually, before I was into sports. So I thought that maybe this would be a good way for me to go back to my roots, so to speak. By highlighting a different reptile every day, every week, every month, however how frequent this podcast ends up being. Today's reptile of the day is the Texas horned lizard. And the fun fact about the Texas horned lizard is that it can squirt blood from its eyes as a means of escaping predators. So that is the reptile of the day, and that is the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe if we get up to 10 double-digit listeners, maybe that'll be enough to convince me to come back. Maybe this is something I'll end up doing once a month, once every couple months, once a week, just to kind of churn out the content here at the Windy City Wire. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly had fun sitting here recording it. And thank you for listening, and maybe see you next time.